Hello and welcome to another episode of the Realtor Rant. I'm your host, Holly Barrett, with my co-host,
Alana O'Hanlon.
And today we have a guest. His name is DeAndre Perez. So DeAndre is a really good realtor friend of mine. And what I love about DeAndre, and I'm really excited to have him on, he is the best hustler I know when it comes to prospecting, and just really working. He's just such a hard worker. So we'll dive into it. He's really a great trainer as well for many agents, especially newer agents who really want to 10x their business. I mean, he's just an awesome dude. You guys are gonna love him, full of energy. So let's just jump in and talk to DeAndre.
Let's do it.
All right, DeAndre, thank you so much for coming on today. I know you're super busy, so let's just jump into it, man. So I've been wanting to connect to you guys for a while because DeAndre, you're my number 2 favorite realtor in Florida. Obviously, Alana has to be number 1, or she might hurt me.
It's
So
true.
But you are my go-to guy, Orlando area. You know, I call you a lot. We talk a lot about all sorts of things, real estate related, you name it. So I'm really happy to have you on here. So yeah, take it away. DeAndre, tell us a little bit about you, how you got started, your roots, that sort of thing. I think that's really worthwhile.
Okay. Well, I've done this for almost a decade. And how I actually got into real estate was a funny story. So I used to work at AT&T, and I was a state certified trainer. A lot of times, whenever there was a manager in training, I would take them in and train them. A lot of times, when stores needed to be cleaned up or new reps were coming on, they would send all these people to me to help them with development at the retailer that we worked with, which was Red Sky Wireless at the time, owned by AT&T. There was a transition where they sold a bunch of their locations to another retailer, which I'm not going to mention. And during that transition, a good friend of mine, he was like, listen, man, you're one of the best at what you do. I need you to do me a favor. Your position's not really going to exist anymore. However, if you can do me this last solid and, move over to the store to help clean them up. Their numbers are bad. The ratings are bad. Customer service reviews are bad. There's an issue and we need someone to identify the issue and correct it. So I go in and I work my magic. When I get there, I make the call and I was like, hey, I realize why you guys aren't making sales. He was like, well, why? I said, well, basically you guys got robbed. They have pieces of paper with the barcodes that were being scanned. They didn't really have devices to sell. Someone was taking the devices and stealing them and probably selling them outside the store. Same thing with a lot of the accessories. So anyways, move forward. I clean all that up. Everything is good. We revamp it, got a whole new staff. The store is pumping with the type of environment and the ecosystem that it should in order for clients to have that experience of, I want to shop here again, especially after they were burned by the last staff. So part of that was when I identified that there was an issue, I was submitting a lot of tickets and it was basically saying something along the lines of so-and-so this device fraud, so-and-so this device fraud. And I'm reporting all these incidents in that manner. So that way the corporate, they have the opportunity to file an insurance claim because everything was properly documented and recover some of the money that they lost from these devices. So corporate comes along and keep in mind, we're in the middle of a new transition at this time. Okay. So during this transition, they came down and they said, okay, well, hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. You seem like a wonderful guy, but we need to talk. Okay. Well, what's the conversation? Now, my friend at that time, he got promoted to district manager, or it might have been regional manager. I mean, again, this was almost a decade ago. And when everything unfolded, they had him there with me and, his bosses were there and they says, well, we see this store has a incredibly high number of fraud tickets that are being submitted. And we see the reviews are really bad. So, what's going on? So we explained to him the situation. Hey, during your transition, we identified there was an issue. We cleaned it up. All the previous staff was gone. Everything's documented. I've been here for maybe 30 days, at this new location, revamping it and training things. So they said, well, I'm glad that you did that and we appreciate your efforts. But unfortunately, since this company we just took over these locations, we have to set an example. Someone has to be let go. So that, I took a stance back and I was kind of in awe because again, I'm the one that cleaned it up and just saved you guys thousands and tens of thousands of dollars off a safe. And these safes, you were looking at, I mean, 6-foot safes, 7-foot safes that were filled with devices at $1,000 a pop. So we're talking tens of thousands of dollars that we saved these guys, you know, that they could have lost and had someone else go in and clean it up, someone with that wasn't as experienced. So my friend who was the regional director at that time, or maybe the district manager, I don't remember, he goes back and forth and just starts arguing and arguing and arguing. He comes back in tears. He goes, listen, man, I'm going to keep it simple. You're my boy. He goes, if this is the kind of environment that this new company is going to offer, I'm going to school and I'm getting my real estate license. I want to take you with me. And he explained it and he says, listen, man, eventually we can get to the point, you know, we all do. We're like, oh, we're going to get our real estate license. We're going to own so many properties. And so that's the dream that we had. So we jumped into real estate together. I got my license while I was on vacation. I was on PTO at that time. One of my reps at that time, he called me and I was a couple of days away from passing, you know, the exam. So he calls me and he says, hey, I have this really big transaction we're trying to close. It's a corporate account, 17 new lines. Now, for anyone who's ever sold in telecommunications or cell phones in retail, you understand a 17 line dealer, that's a big deal. You know, that's a big deal, huge reps, a lot of credibility. You're getting noticed. You're making your mark on that company with a deal that big. He's like, but I don't know what to do. So again, I'm on PTO, but I'm a good, kind-hearted guy. So I drive over there. I say, okay, here's how everything should be handled. Here's how everything should do. We're good to go. So his boss at the time, the one that was already causing chaos, trying to get rid of me, she says, oh, congratulations, you're here. I said, I am, but I'm on PTO. So, you know, if there's something we can briefly discuss, great, but I can't clock in. I just came real quick to give this young man some guidance, and then I'm on my way. She goes, well, there was a new handbook that rolled out while you were on vacation, and the new terms of the handbook says that these devices need to be secured a certain way. And I was like, okay, I'll read the handbook when I get back. Oh, she goes, there's no need to read the handbook when you get back. Since technically you agreed to any changes and you're a part of this company, your employee failed to follow the new proper protocol, so you're fired. So while I'm on vacation, they fire me for a handbook that I did not have an opportunity to read over something another employee wanted. Like, that's how bad this witch hunt was. So I already knew and I already came to terms that it was coming to an end. To me, that was just the universe saying, hey, it's time for greater things. And that's how I took it. So I got my real estate license. I tried selling timeshares. I was bad at it because I suck at lying to people. And it just turned into this wonderful thing. Now, part of that journey was being that I come from a certain background where there's a lot of low income. There's a high crime rate neighborhood. We're going to leave it at that in Sanford. I didn't have a lot of the connections needed to go ahead and get established and start making sales as quick as some people would. Plus,
Was it the actual projects or?
A block outside. It's a community called Goldsboro. So I'm not going to lie and say I'm from the projects, but one block outside. I'm from 13th Street in Sanford. So, you know, it was one of those things where I didn't really have the relationships needed. And everyone I did have relationships with, I didn't really think they were in a position where they were capable of buying. Okay. Huge mistake on my end. Let's put that out there now. 7 months into the business, I go to my mentor. I'm frustrated, tears in my eyes. I sit down and I said, Tom, it's not working. I'm door knocking, I'm cold calling, I'm putting out flyers, I'm doing open houses. Nothing seems to be working. What am I doing wrong? Now, as you ladies know, it takes about 6 months to a year to really get established in real estate before you get your first deal. So at this point, I'm frustrated. No one had told me this. I'm in tears sitting down. And he looks at me. He says, well, tell me everything you're doing. So I go down the rundown. He's like, that's your mistake. You're trying to be something that you're not. He goes, go back to the environment where you're from, where you already have those relationships, and work those relationships. He goes, where's the highest population and where do the most amount of people live in that community? And I says, well, you know, Seminole Gardens, you know, also known as the projects in Sanford. He goes, okay, well, go door knock over there. Okay, great. So I start door knocking over there. And that's when the business blew up. There were so many people that were tired of that environment that wanted a way out. There were so many people that owned homes in that neighborhood that wanted to be landlords thinking they were making a change. And they were sick and tired of the tenants because not everyone's going to respect your property, especially in some of these areas. Like, they just simply don't care. So mix that in with all the people that are riding around saying, oh, we can help you with your house. We can fix this. We can paint that. Most of these people are nowhere near qualified. They're just trying to make a quick buck off anyone who's willing to hire them. So it was just a mix of the perfect storm to provide me with the opportunity to build relationships and an area and an environment where I'm already known and people don't see me as a threat versus, the way I dressed. And I'm always suited up. But at the time I was always suited up. I didn't speak in the same manner at that time. So when I'm door knocking these $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 homes, now keep this in mind. This is back when homes were like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So we were still coming off the bottom of the market. I'm going around these high clientele areas trying to get me a decent sale. And with the way that I presented myself at that time, I was new. I didn't know. They saw me as a threat. They weren't as comfortable facilitating business with me. They probably saw me as a little bit shady.
You have to meet people where they are.
And that's something that I didn't learn at that time, which I later learned. But that's when the business blew up, and that's when my understanding of how investors work really got started. Because if I can go back, I would do it all over again, because those were the greatest relationships that still help fuel my business to this day.
Let me ask you, why do you choose to wear a suit every day?
Ooh, I love that question.
Okay, go.
One, it's become a part of who I am, but it's just what I'm comfortable with. I mean, to tell you the truth, I have more suits than I have regular clothes. Like if you look in my closet, I maybe have like 2, maybe 3 shirts, and the rest is just all suits. And they're not even like good shirts. Like it sucks. Like when I go out, like I don't have options. These are like tattered up shirts from me working in the yard or things like that. But one is because it helped me gain a lot more credibility, because a lot of times if you see a man in a suit, especially a well-fitted suit, you're going to stop and say, what do you do? Most men are going to look up to him as a potential authority figure and think, hey, this guy walks around like he's somebody important, even though I'm not. I'm just a normal guy like everybody else. And most women are going to look at it and say, wow, that gentleman looks handsome in a suit. So on both sides, okay, it attracts attention, helping me gain a better opportunity to market myself and establish my brand. Okay. The same way, and it's for the same exact reasons why all these other companies make you wear uniforms, because it gets their brand out there. This is my brand. It gets my brand out there. It makes people stop and talk to me. And almost every single day when I'm out and about, people will stop and talk to me for one simple reason. I'm in a suit. And they tell me all the time, wow, you're in a suit. What do you do for a living? Wow, that suit looks good. You must be headed somewhere important. Sometimes I'm like, even if I'm sitting at home, if I'm going to a coffee shop for a quick cup of coffee, I'm going to go get dressed, put on the suit, grab a cup of coffee, go home, take the suit off. It's almost like a uniform to me.
Yeah, that's cool. It reminds me of, because I'm a much more casual in my business, especially where I live. It is very casual, and I show a lot of rural properties where, quite frankly, you kind of need to be prepared to walk in the woods, wearing my Doc Martens is probably the most appropriate daily shoe, you know what I'm saying? Or in jeans. And my Doc Martens is actually probably the most appropriate attire for most of what I do. But you're reminding me, as far as branding and what your attire is, there was this attorney. She's a local attorney, and her branding is so funny. Her branding, even her business card says this. It says, bitch with a bun.
Oh.
Bitch in a bun. And she is an attorney, and she always has a big giant bun on her head. It's just a massive bun. Her hair is in this big bun, and she is kind of a bitch, honestly. So it's just, branding is so interesting. And I mean, how do you coach people on when it comes to branding? Is that something that comes up a lot in your coaching to people? Because I feel like it's a rabbit hole that you can get totally lost in too.
Yeah, so I mean, you really have to be who you are. And there was a gentleman by the name of Brian Day who used to work for our company. Guy makes $340,000 a year, almost every single year. He shows up in a regular t-shirt, beach shorts, and sandals. That's it. This is a $300,000 agent, just shy of $500,000, and that's his attire every single day. So out of the many agents that I've coached, the one thing that I try to get them to understand is real estate, it's not a job, it's a career, but it's not an ordinary career. It's a lifestyle, and every lifestyle is different. So, if you're a tech nerd or if you're a golfer and all you prefer is khakis, then wear fucking khakis. If you prefer suits, then wear a suit. If you're a party girl, then wear a party girl. Now, obviously understand that there's limits to these, because you also don't want, khakis with holes in them. You don't want to be a young lady with cleavage out, knowing sometimes you may be dealing with couples, and the wives might not appreciate that so much. So there's limits to it, but be who you are. And because the lifestyle that you have attracts people, and every single person, regardless of their lifestyle, they need three things: food, water, shelter. We offer shelter. So, as far as clothing attire, things like that, I mean, dress how you want, but if you're going to do it well. And I don't care if I'm out in the woods. I mean, I'll climb a tree and shove a horse shit in a suit, but I'm not taking the suit off. Like, and I'll go door knocking for hours, and I have come home smelling like horse shit. That's just, it's just part of what it is. But find your niche, find your style, and do it good. Do it well. Be the best. Leave a mark. And that's a problem with a lot of coaching. I don't mean to ramble on there, but a lot of coaches, they say, well, do this, do that, you're going to be successful. But that's not always true. And one of my best stories and one of my top producers, she came to me from a certain brokerage. She was not having the success she wanted. They were trying to completely change her, not realizing who she is attracts the people that she surrounds herself with. She was basically one of those young ladies who loved to go out and loved to go ahead and find, more wealthy older gentlemen who'd like to go ahead and pay for her things, and she was all about being the bottle girl and partying and living that lifestyle. When I identified that, I sat down and had a conversation with her, and I said, okay, who pays for your nails? Well, I got this one guy. Who pays for your mortgage? Well, I got this other guy. Who pays for your car? Well, it depends on the month. I have different people for that too. I said, great, that's going to be our audience. That's your lifestyle. Let's do it well. After that coaching session, on day 3 of working with me, I set her up I set her up for a networking event with another one of my agents where they went around. It was like a very fancy, ritzy diner. She came back with 3 listings that night from older gentlemen. Now, a part of that was, though, having that discussion of how do you maintain professional standards and make sure that boundaries are not going to get crossed, because it's still a business that you're running. Right. But the point of that is, no matter what your lifestyle is, do it and do it well, because at the end of the day, you're attracting people and nobody wants to be homeless. Unless you're throwing homeless parties under a bridge, then don't do that. That's different. It's not going to help you in real estate.
I understand you're not advocating for, all of us to become like real estate call girls.
No, but if that's your thing, do it.
And do it well.
Exactly.
Do it today. Be a high class call girl if you must. But what you're saying is know your audience, know your vibe. What circles do you like to be in? Like, I know I like to network. I like to go to networking events, specifically, investor networking events. I like to talk to other networking, I like to talk to other investors. As far as my personality, I'm definitely more of a guy humor kind of girl. Like, I'm much more comfortable in a room full of guys. That kind of leads me of like how I move or where I put my money and that sort of thing. And what kind of groups I want to be a part of, right? So I'm sorry, Lonnie, did you have any questions about that? I don't want to take over.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Go on.
I kind of want to know about, so we're going into 2025. What are you telling your trainees? What are you going to be doing differently? What is 25 looking like for you, DeAndre? Does it look like business as usual, or are you making any pivots?
So that's a great question. There's going to be 2 parts to that. All right. So one, every single year, except for COVID was a weird time. Like all the laws of physics, like there were times where you're driving down the street and gravity didn't even work right. COVID was weird, except for during this little COVID period. Every single year, fourth quarter is my strongest quarter. And this is deeply connected to 2025. One, because all these realtors are going on vacation. All these realtors are quitting. All these people are going on vacation. Guys, I don't know what world that you guys are from, anyone who's out there listening. But if you're going on vacation and your lease is up, your landlord still wants your ass out. So if they still have to move out, they're still going to have to go to a real estate professional to facilitate, moving over to a new property. I have always pushed my brand the strongest in 2024 when everyone else starts receding, because the need to have a roof over your head does not go away. Regardless of the season, regardless of the markets, regardless of the trends, I bet you if every single one of you check Redfin, every single one of you check Zillow, every one of you check the MLS, closings are happening every single day. So push your brand out there stronger when everyone else is pulling back. When the fear is there, become braver, because the need to have a house doesn't matter. And gearing into 2025, and I'm not going to get into politics, but everyone's worried about politics. Everyone's worried about this. Everyone's worried about that. I may not be the wisest person on earth, but I'm wise enough to know sometimes there's presidents that I agree with. Sometimes there's presidents that I don't agree with. Regardless of what the hell's going on, I've never seen someone wake up and say, I don't like the president. I'm going to be homeless today. This shit doesn't happen. So gearing into 2025, I'm going to continue to do the same damn thing. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to make friends. I'm going to build relationships. And I'm going to build the relationships that matter. But my opinion on 2025, and I don't have a crystal ball by a long shot, I may be wrong. I think that things are going to stay about the same. Everyone thinks that it's going to be so much different, that things are going to change, the market's going to crash, things like that. Interest rates are going to drop down significantly. I personally don't think any of those things are going to happen. But for all the real estate professionals that are involved and active, this is going to be one of the best years that we've ever had. Mainly because of that NAR lawsuit. That was beautiful. Let it burn. Let it burn. Let the whole industry crumble. Because the harder things get, the more the people who really shouldn't be in this business continue to fall out. And the more of people like the three of us that are actually in the business, genuinely wanting to help people, not just chase a check, we're going to have more opportunities due to less competition. So for 2025, I think real estate professionals and realtors all over the country are going to have a phenomenal year. It's going to be spectacular. Okay. I think interest rates are going to be the same. So, gearing toward marketing and some of the things that I'm going to be pivoting, I'm going to be pushing a lot more down payment assistance, and I'm going to be pushing the message a lot more that sellers are willing to go ahead and give credits. Now, I don't want to get too into statsy, okay? But I don't know about your markets or where you're from, but what I can tell you is Central Florida, I pulled the stats the other day. Every single city in Central Florida, at least 50% of those sales are closing with the sellers giving closing cost concessions. And out of that 50%, about 40 to 50% of that are getting closing cost concessions big enough to cover all of the closing costs. So 25% of the sales are having, basically no closing costs because the seller's paying for it all, because all sellers just want to do is move. That's why they put the home on the market to begin with. And then as far as, just generally getting closing costs, 50% of the sales in total are giving closing costs. So the reason why I'm mentioning that, as well as down payment assistance, those are the two messages I'm pushing, because everyone's biggest concern now is the market's too high. And that's not true. That's not true. Okay. It's not the market's too high. Yeah, the market's higher than it was, but that's going to be the same for everything else. Okay. Gas is high. That doesn't stop you from driving. Food is high. I hope that's not stopping you from eating. If it is, we have to, try to figure that out. Stocks are high. Everyone else is still investing. Okay. Real estate's high. Why is that stopping people from buying? What people are really trying to tell us as consultants is they don't feel comfortable financially. So
Right.
by offering options, and by educating people, okay, to let them know that, hey guys, we can help you out with the financial side of things. A lot more people are going to see the light, and they're going to see, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can buy a house and still have a little more savings left over after closing. Maybe I can buy a house now that I have that extra chunk that I thought I needed to save for all of my own. Maybe I can sell my house because my realtor has a strategy such as offering a credit for a 2-for-1 buy down that's going to attract more attention and cause me to sell in about 30 days instead of 4 to 5 months like most of these homes are sitting on the market today. So that's going to be the biggest talking point of how we can help our consumers from a financial perspective, okay? Because that's what's going to answer a lot of their questions. Everyone says I'm waiting on rates to come down. No, they're not. They're just waiting on things to be more affordable. The housing market's going to come down. You don't want that. Because the truth is, if the housing market collapses, this is such a big asset for so many wealthy people. If the housing market collapses, a lot of people are losing jobs. Do you want to buy a house when you have a job, or do you want to buy a house when you're not sure if you're going to have a job tomorrow?
Let me go back to the stats for a second, because you said that you can pull, I know in the MLS, you can pull a report, look at the closed transactions. You can quickly see the amount of closing sellers' concessions right there. But one thing that we can't see that doesn't tell the whole story, because that's not telling us, like, even if those seller concessions increase since the NAR lawsuit went into effect, the change, that should increase, because if there is 0% seller paid compensation to the buyer's agent, which you don't know, you're not seeing that, right? You have no idea. That's like separate now, right? And so if there is 0%, then we should see the seller concessions increase. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what you just described, it looks good. Like we could market, sellers are giving money, but are they? Like, or are they actually giving less because they're not paying for the compensation? They're just maybe throwing a little bit more on the concession side. Am I making sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I'm going to answer that question actually. So the stats that I pulled before that whole August 17th change kicked in. Okay. When I pulled the stats about a month ago, they're about the same. Okay. We saw maybe just like a 1% increase. And as far as the commission and compensation, sellers are still paying. Okay. Sellers are still paying. That thing barely had an indent. And in fact, the DOJ is so upset that barely had an indent. They finally settled on everything. I want to say maybe about a week and a half ago, that whole NAR stuff mess that's going on. The DOJ went and stepped up and they basically implied, hey, we're not happy with the results because nothing changed. This isn't what we intended. Nothing changed. So now they're trying to get buyers involved to sue. So nothing has changed at all from the concession standpoint. Now, looking at it from stats.
Hold on, DeAndre. How do you know that? Wait, how do you know that the sellers are still covering the compensation from the buyer's agent?
That's a great question. So talk to people, talk to sellers, talk to agents. Okay. Talk to your title companies. There's people who see the statements. If you reach out to your title company, multiple title companies, they're the ones that see the bottom line. Hey, question, are you seeing people pay commission? All the time. It's not changing. All the time. It's not changing. There's companies out there that you can go to that actually, pay title companies for that research to put together reports for the public. Or you can save your time and just talk to your title companies. Talk to a bunch of listing agents. Now, yeah, we will have a couple of agents go back and say, well, my seller's not paying. It's not that your seller's not paying. You failed to consult your seller on a proper strategy to let him know this is the best way to sell his house because no one's going to want to work for free or because it's no longer required. You didn't do your job and have this conversation. But when your seller's wondering why the home isn't selling, the conversation is going to come up and he's going to sell when he's actually paying someone.
Wait, I'm going to push back on you because I want this to be a conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me push back because here's what I think the strategy, in my opinion, should be. In a buyer's market, a true buyer's market, yes, there's a lot of competition for the house, and let's say, or it's not a desirable house. Okay, it's just not a desirable asset. I can see the benefit of putting your best foot forward on the sales side and having a sign writer or literature inside of the property that says we are offering 1%, we are offering 2%, we're offering 3%. Okay. But in every other situation, in a normal market, a balanced market, or a seller's market, or it's a property that's very desirable, why not just put it out there, put a good price, do all the marketing that we do, and then let the offers come in and we negotiate case by case? Why bother setting a percentage or putting a percentage out there or even saying that you're covering it?
God, I love that question. Okay. That's a great question. Okay. So one of two things. It is a normal market. We're back to where we were pre-pandemic. Okay. As far as, some of the sales, the listings happening compared to, the amount of closings that were actually happening. And we're not in a buyer's market yet. We're still a seller's market. A buyer's market is about 5 to 6 months of supply. We're at about 4.32. So we're basically there, but we're not officially there yet. Now, it's still a normal market only because we still have people that want to buy. We still have people that want to sell. It's that simple. As long as people don't want to be homeless, people are dying, people are getting married, people are getting divorced, new people are getting born, sellers are always going to have the need to sell. Now, the reason why I have that conversation in advance, my job when it comes to, working with sellers is to educate them. Because, these listing appointments, I don't just go and say, oh, I'm gonna love to take your listings. No, I'm going to have a consultation. And if we're not a good fit, I'm walking out that door, because at the end of the day, that's my business. That's my brand. So I educate them because the more knowledge that they have, the less there's going to be surprised when, these things come up. The less they're going to be surprised. They come back and say, hey, we want to negotiate commission, which before the whole lawsuit, I've always negotiated my commission anyways. So to me, this is nothing more than normal. It's just we can no longer see the rates in our system. So I have that conversation with the sellers in advance. So that way they understand. And the way that I present that to my sellers, and I do this for every single listing. Hey, this is my marketing budget. This is what I'm going to put into marketing. Here's everything that I'm going to do for marketing. The biggest marketing expense that I have is the other real estate agent. And if you read the listing agreements, The old ones and the new ones. The old ones basically said, you're going to pay your listing broker. You understand your listing brokerage has the right to go ahead and compensate another agent or agency, or at least I can speak for the FAR bar contracts in Florida. They're going to compensate the other agency that successfully contracts a buyer into the transaction. Okay. Now you understand we're fully disclosing, because we have to disclose in real estate. Here's the rates we're going to compensate depending on the type of brokerage they are, whether they're single agent, transaction brokers. I mean, the list goes on. Now, the only difference now is in the agreements, it still has that, but the verbiage is different. And that's just to satisfy the people who would prefer to watch the news instead of actually listen to the professionals who are educating people. And the agreements now basically say, hey, the seller is either going to pay them directly or we're going to pay them directly. Either way, they're being paid. But the way that I tell my clients is, hey, my biggest expense is that other agent that contracts a buyer, because I'm spending money to market your property. They're spending money to market to other buyers. So these buyers agents that are coming along, when they get a buyer, they're bringing it to us. They've spent, most of them have spent money to keep their business afloat, to market to consumers. Okay. I'm just marketing to those people. So here's what that split's going to look like. Now, sometimes they go back and say, well, why pay them? Why doesn't their buyer pay for them? Well, sir, that's not really how it works. Their buyer is going to be paying for their mortgage professional. Think of it like a roofer. If you pay your roofer and your roofer says he's going to charge you 6% of the value of the home, that's it. As long as the roof gets done, it doesn't matter. If he charges 14 grand, as long as the roof gets done, it doesn't matter what you do with that money. Now, you're not going to go back and fire your roofer because he hired 4 people. As long as it's staying within the budget that you promised to do the job for, it doesn't matter. But it's the same reason why in advance, the roofer is going to say, hey, you understand this is my payment. He has that conversation. So that way, when the bill comes, the owner's not surprised. Oh, I didn't know I had to pay you. Yeah, you did. So all it is setting the groundwork for things to be smoother by making sure people are more transparent.
So it sounds like you're basically still operating business as usual. You're doing co-op. See, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm completely, and I know with Epic, we are allowed to make the choice whether we want to do the co-op or the seller pays direct, I believe. But I know other
We are.
brokerages, okay. But I know other brokerages like EXP doesn't allow it, which I think is interesting from a liability standpoint. I guess they've made that decision. So I've made the decision personally to not do it because, like I said, I prefer it to be separate. Like I'd actually prefer it to be something that, hey, just bring us the offer, bring us what you're asking for, and let's go from there. Like let's just look at it offer by offer. So I don't know.
You say you're buyer broker friendly, essentially, without disclosing exactly the percentage that the seller would be willing to compensate a buyer.
But you're not even allowed to say that in the MLS. Not here anyway.
No, I mean, but having a conversation amongst agents.
Is that right, DeAndre? Is that kind of how you play it? Like,
No. Here's why. All right, I'm going to ask you ladies a question. Before real estate, you ever worked an hourly job?
sure.
Okay.
Barely. I always got fired.
I got fired plenty of times too, so I understand.
I was always insubordinate. I was always meant to run my own business.
Oh, no, Alana and I both got fired from the same job.
What?
Actually, there were 3 of us friends that worked there. We each got fired for different things. First it was you, Lonnie, right? Or no, first it was.
No, I don't know. It wasn't me first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she doesn't want to be the fall guy. It wasn't me first.
I
think I was second.
It was the best. That job was awesome, though.
It was the best job.
Go ahead.
But we were young and foolish and all the good old days.
But so think of it like this, okay? Imagine if you get hired at DFG Automotive, to be a receptionist. Okay, I'm just throwing random jobs. I don't want to throw in any companies. Would you ever? They say, hey, listen, here's your schedule. I want you to go ahead and work. Just show up at your job. Okay, well, what am I getting paid? Well, it depends. We'll see after we see how good you are. We'll determine what your pay is. No one's going to do that. It doesn't make sense. Just because they have the right to, it does. Usually, most of us are walking out the door and say, "Hey, if you can't tell me what I'm getting paid, I'm not going to work for you." If we're willing to do that at a job as simple as McDonald's, why are we not willing to do that with a career where we're managing people's lives? Because here's the other side of that. If we don't have that conversation in advance and you're telling me I may have to potentially gamble, that also tells me I may have to get my client to fall in love with a property and then say, hey, you got to pay me because she's not willing to pay me. Oh, you can't do it? Sorry, I can't help you. We need to,
Yeah.
that's a conversation that needs to be had up front, because we're also, and I've been on both sides. And a part of this, I run a team of 35 agents. I've coached plenty of agents in other brokerage as well. I probably coached well over 100 agents over the last 4 years. Okay, on top of being a top producer in my company. So the volume of transactions that I see, I think we have like maybe 600 agents. I'm within top five. The volume of transactions that we see between my production and my team's production, I get to see it on a mass scale to really figure out the science of what works. No one wants to go to work and gamble on what they're getting paid. It leads opportunities for a bad experience, which leaves opportunities for less referrals. How was your day today, honey? Oh, it was all right. I fell in love with the house. And unfortunately, since our realtor wasn't getting paid, or maybe he wasn't getting paid proper, we got surprised. He told us we had to spend an extra $14,000 to buy it, and we just can't afford it. And that sucks, because the kids were really playing around the yard and they were having a blast and making friends. It leaves a bad experience.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. You said you wouldn't go to work for someone, for nothing, with no understanding of what you're going to be paid. But the buyer's agent is not working for the seller's agent or the seller. The buyer's agent is working for the buyer, which is why the buyer needs to have the expectation up front and in writing of, this is what my services cost to you. We will make an offer and attempt to see if we can get seller concession to cover my to help you with some of these upfront costs, but this is the compensation for me for you to use a buyer's agent. And furthermore, we may need to start as a best practice. We may need to start going ahead and getting buyer's proof of funds, so that to make sure, which I guess we should already, right? But like,
Yeah, absolutely.
we don't always get buyer's.
Please definitely do. Oh, I do.
Do you?
Or your lender does. Your lender does. But go ahead, because I'm loving this. Go ahead.
So if we can put our eyes on a proof of funds letter, whether it's from the lender or from the client themselves, at least to show us, hey, they have the liquidity to cover both the down payment and the compensation for my services, and the maximum that they have to provide that liquidity. The maximum purchase price is X. Therefore, we are not looking at anything above that purchase price. And so unless, barring them going out and buying a large, expenditure, or something that they shouldn't be buying, then it should be fine. Like there shouldn't be a situation where they're like, oh, I love that house. And then you're like, oh yeah, but you're going to owe me X% of it. Oh no. I mean, so all of that they should know.
So then a follow-up to that would be, do you call agents to see what they're offering before you even show the client the property, to make sure that you're managing the expectations, so the scenario that you just gave us doesn't happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do, during my consultation, I do educate my buyers as well, the same way we educate our sellers. And I say, hey, here's how the buyer's brokerage agreement works. In the event where I'm not, receiving compensation or a certain amount of, whatever the case is, because everyone's agreements are different depending on the brokerage you're with and things like that. In the event where I'm not being paid, or potentially not being paid enough, depending on how your agreement's written out, you owe me that difference, or you'll have to pay me. So we can option one, I can call every single listing to confirm that they're paying, which most are, okay? Or if they're not paying, I can skip over it so it doesn't cost you guys an extra $14,000 to $20,000. And most of the time that's what they say. Okay, great. Now I have my client's consent to make sure that I'm not costing them extra money. The second you don't tell me, hey, I'm paying this amount, or I don't care if it's 1%. I just need to know I'll happily work for 0.5%. I've done it. So I don't care if it's 1% or 0.5%. I'll happily do it, because to me, it doesn't have to be 2.5%, doesn't have to be 3%. But I do need to know that I'm being paid prior to agreeing to a job. I'm an independent contractor. I'll facilitate my end of this contract in exchange for money. That's how my family survives. So, if I call and you say, well, we're not paying, or it's negotiable, or it depends, we'll see. No, it doesn't see. I'm just not showing. Okay, hey, thank you very much for your time. When you can decide that your seller's paying and give me a clear answer, give me a call back and we'll revisit it. Here's the truth. Eventually that house will sell, because there's going to be someone that's going to go ahead and negotiate it anyways. And the seller's going to say, oh, I should pay. I don't think, Holly, that model is sustainable. Here's why. Okay. The reason why most sellers can pay, okay, is simply because it comes out of their equity. If that was money that had to come out of their pocket every time, most of these sellers couldn't afford to sell. With this model, we're setting things up for a potential crash if this was something that was absolutely forced and we were forced to have buyers pay more frequently. And the reason why I say that is because buyers, most of them are getting loans. Typical commission's about 2 to 3% on average. I think 2.4, or maybe it was 2.3. Sometimes 2.3 to 2.4 is what actually the national average came out to. So, within the last quarter. Okay. And that it's actually gone down by like 0.01% since these changes have taken effect. So I've been following this closely. But anyways, back to the point that I was making. Buyers are already paying out of pocket their lenders at about 2.5 to 3.5%. And you're now telling them their closing cost jumps up to 50% in a market where these people are already struggling. We're going to have so many less transactions due to affordability when affordability is already an issue. It's going to force things into a mega buy market because so many homes are not going to sell due to the lack of buyers now that are available. Now it's not a choice. It's a supply and demand issue.
Right.
The demand drops down drastically. When the demand drops down drastically, these homes are going to go back in. They're going to be on the market for months if this is something that was forced. And that's why these new changes that have taken effect haven't really had much of an effect because this is a model that we've been following since the 80s and it works. That's like saying, I want to go ahead and buy a car, but I want it to have square wheels. For what? The round wheels work. Why are we trying to change something that's worked since the beginning of time? All over principle?
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up soon, but I did want to, we could keep going for hours on this particular debate. And you and I enjoy debating with each other. We don't agree all the time. We actually disagree a lot.
A lot, yes.
But it's fun. But we didn't even mention how we met, DeAndre. So I just want to quickly mention because you have now helped actually three if you count Ben, but you haven't closed with him yet. But you've actually closed on transactions with 2 out of my 4 brothers, and you've even been working with Vincent a little bit to maybe get one of my brothers into an investment property. So my family loves you. I'm really grateful for you working with my brothers because they're all in their 20s, and so it's a big deal. It's awesome that 2 of them now own property, and you were a part of that. So that's how we met. Is I just found you on Realtor.com.
So it was actually one of my toughest sales that you met me on. You called me on a home. I want to say it was 1106 Orange Avenue in Sanford. And you were like, hey, I saw you online. It was Zillow. I remember. I found you on, online, and we want to take a look at this property. So we get to discussing things, and after that, it turns out the property was not a good fit. But because I value relationships, I was finding out a little more about what your goals are and things like that. And it turns out like you were a tremendous friend, and that was what I want to say going on about 5 years now, 6 years that we've been awesome friends. And I love your family. You guys are all terrific. But yeah, it was one of my first sales when I got started back in a rough side of town in Sanford. And, that was actually funny because that was actually from a seller who didn't want to pay commission. And, I had to have that conversation with her. And that was before all these changes took effect. But we've had a tremendous relationship ever since, and you've helped me out like amazing. Anytime I need something in Georgia, you're the number one. Anything north of Florida, like you're the number one person I call before even looking online, and you've never let me down either on anything.
You're hilarious. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, yeah. Before we wrap up, was there anything else that we didn't cover that you really had a burning desire to talk about, or Lonnie, same to you?
Oh, I was just going to ask you how new construction is affecting your market.
Oh God. New construction. Oh,
do we need to segue that into another podcast episode?
No. So new builds are great. And I think this is a case by case basis, depending on the state that our listeners are in. But what I can say is 2 years ago, Florida was the number 1 state as far as positive population. Okay, as far as an increase, because we've always saw through about 300 people move in and 300 people move out, or somewhere along the lines of that. I think numbers may be off, but last year we were the number 1 state in the country as far as new development. So new construction is just everywhere. Okay. I think new construction can be great because of the incentives that they offer. Okay. Because I mean, and that's another thing that I preach to a lot of my agents, especially if they're on the listing side. If the builders who have millions of dollars that they spend on research are all keeping the model the same, and they're also probably about 50% of our sales, maybe 40% if I had to guess, are all new builds. It's just we don't see them in the MLS. But if about 40 to 50% of our sales are all following this same business model, and they're taking money away from these sellers, then why are we reinventing the wheel? Because what a lot of these builders are doing, and the way it's affecting my business is, if I ever have a listing that's near a new construction site, a lot of times I got to have that conversation with the seller. Hey, we may be on the market for quite some time, unless you want to offer a $14,000 credit and buy down their interest rate.
Exactly.
So they're really, 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 really hard to compete with in today's market. But as far as from a client's perspective, I think that more agents need to educate themselves on new construction, because if you can get your client in with a warranty, less money out of pocket, and a much better interest rate, I mean, why not give the client that option so that way they can be educated? So on a buyer's perspective, it's awesome. One, I know what I'm being paid up front. Okay. Two, they have more options for my clients as far as homes and incentives. But on the seller side, it's definitely hurting a lot of the listings out there because a lot of sellers are not in a position where they can afford to compete with these guys.
Yeah, I'm in Pinellas County, so I'm just west of Tampa, and we don't have any more dirt to build on. We're just building up at this point. So, but a lot of people move here and want to live in Pinellas County when they're coming from out of state, and when they get here and they can see what they can get for 400,000, 500, 600,000. And then I'm like, well, do you really have to be in Pinellas County, or can I take you over the bridge and I take them to Palmetto or Wesley Chapel, and then I show them new construction, what they can get? They're like, yeah, we'll make that 35-minute commute, because I mean, you're just getting so much more bang for your buck on the outskirts of Pinellas County, plus all the incentives that they're offering. So, I mean, anybody that will listen to me from a buyer's perspective, unless they have to be in Pinellas County for one reason or another, I'm helping them explore these different new constructions options. However, what I was noticing was all those sellers that are residential that are on the market, man, they're really getting hit hard, staying on the market, having to offer buy downs plus extra concessions plus at least 3% commission, because these builders are offering 3% commission. Plus, I just closed two. One, I got a $5,000 bonus. The next deal I did with them, I got a $10,000 bonus. So it's really hurting the sellers, but a great option for the buyers, at least, where I am in the Tampa Bay area.
So there's some strategies that I actually implemented to help compete with that, and the results have been consistent so far. So I had a seller. It was a weird community in Point St. I never seen anything like it. In 2010, they built 4 townhomes and they stopped. In 2018, they built 4 more townhomes, different styles, but 4 years makes a lot of difference with cosmetic and trends. You ladies know, 4 more years later, and every 4 years, they just kept adding more. And now it's surrounded by these $500,000 homes that are all new construction at 2.9% with a bonus and closing cost concessions. And it's really hard to compete with. But being that a lot of agents are commission driven, I told them, I said, listen, I'm going to charge you 5%. Okay. Only because we've done multiple transactions together and you don't deserve to be stuck holding the bag. Here's the strategy that we're going to implement. Out of that 5%, I'm going to take 1.5%, and we're going to offer the other 3% to the other agent. Or I think about a year, I think we ended up paying the other agent side like 3.5% is what we offered. All these other agents, we had multiple offers within 3 or 4 days over asking price. Meanwhile, there was 3 more units within those 4 buildings that were sitting on the market for months. And those other units looked way better than our unit. But the biggest difference was I had that conversation to implement that strategy. The other thing is, to help the sellers out, almost every single MLS, we have this reverse marketing feature. Okay, this reverse prospecting feature.
I'm familiar. Mm-hmm.
What I usually do with a lot of my sales is whenever I have a listing out there and I have that conversation, if the seller's willing to grant the credit, and I'm even willing to give a little, because now I'm looking at volume. This is how I made it a top 5. Okay. I'm willing to take a cut if I have to. Okay. By a certain portion, because you're going to help them buy anyways. You're going to get paid anyways. They're going to send you their friends and family. And Holly can tell you, if I would have screwed up on her first brother's transactions, she wouldn't have trusted me with the rest. So you have to do what's right for the client. So sometimes I'll take a cut on mine and I'll say, hey, I'll take it out of mine. You take a little bit out of yours. Let's advertise this as a bonus, or not even the bonus. Let's advertise this as a closing cost credit to buy down the rate. By doing that, a lot of my clients, we ended up over asking price, beating neighborhood records in a market where things are staying stable, and in a market where other areas are actually decreasing. We're beating neighborhood records because we're speaking to consumers and what they want. In addition, in the remarks, we also have down payment assistance options available here. Now, then what I do is, if I'm, especially when I am paying 3% commission, which most of the time I do, I reverse prospect and I blast everybody. Hey, we're paying a 3% commission, multiple offers, incredible traffic. But now, to make this simpler, because it's all about, making things as fluent as possible, I hop on ChatGPT, I copy that list and paste it of all the realtors for reverse prospecting. And if there's a simpler way to do this, guys, teach me. But I go back in and I say, hey, give me a BCC format of every single email and only the email separated by commas, okay, or a CSV format, which stands for comma separated values. And it gives me every single email. I copy and I paste that into the BCC on Gmail. So everyone gets a blind carbon copy and an independent email. And I say,
That's
hey,
brilliant.
Wonderful home here, 3% commission, and I'm not taking jabs at anybody, but I'm speaking to the market that I'm advertising towards. Come check our home if you actually want to get paid. But those little tiny puns, they work because I'm advertising to realtors. So I'm going to speak to what realtors want to hear. Realtors want to hear commission. Now, at the same time, in the public remarks, I'm advertising to consumers. So that's how I've been competing with a lot of the new builds and when I'm in that situation, and it makes a huge difference. But the big piece of that is I'm not promoting, I'm marketing. There's a strategy behind it. So use ChatGPT, it's free.
Oh, I love Chatty. I name it. I love on it. Like
Chatty. I'm going to start calling it that. I like that.
I have to say, 3 realtors talking about commission can be a little dangerous. So when we say percentage numbers, we're not saying that that's what you have to do, or I'm not sure what the appropriate disclaimer is here, but they're just apples.
No, listen, everything is negotiable. I will without a doubt go back and say, and this is just me, how I run my business. We're not saying you can't sell your home. And I will happily tell the client, hey, don't offer commission. There's plenty of agents that say, yeah, everything's negotiable. But for my brand and my reputation, I won't take that listing because I'm not going to be known as the guy around town that won't pay. And I tell the sellers that. Now, however, here's 3 more realtors that you can contact and interview to see if maybe they're willing to take it. I'm still going to give that client options, even though I'm turning down the business, simply because I really do want to see them sell. I'm not going to say you can't sell. I'm not going to say you have to sell. I'm just saying I can't be the guy that facilitates the transaction because of the potential blowback that has on my brand and my reputation.
And you have that, I would say, probably that similar conversation when it comes to overpricing a property.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's a big head right on the nail. Well said. Exactly. And if we're willing to turn it down for things like that, why aren't we willing to turn it down for other things? Now don't get me wrong. I mean, the longer your name's on a listing, the more people see it. But the longer your name's on a listing, the more people also question it.
It's interesting. I mean, you bring up some really interesting points, and it really is an entire podcast episode where we could talk about the different styles of being paid and how to structure this. Because I think there's good arguments on all sides. And I think you've made some good arguments as well. I tend to be of the belief that over time, my way will be the new norm. And so I think there will be a stigma around, you not going in right away with the co-op option. But anyway, I could be wrong. But I do want to ask real quick before we leave. You mentioned down payment assistance a couple times. So I see a lot of advertisements for this, but is there, for realtors, is there a good resource who do you use? Like, who do you partner with? For some of these programs that you like, who do you go to? Or is this just state by state specific? I mean, what advice do you have on that?
Is it okay if I mention a specific individual? Yeah. And why not? Okay.
Go for it.
So 2 things. One, every market has HUD counseling agencies. Pre-pandemic, it was HUD counseling counselors. they're now agencies. You can look them up. It's on government websites. Those agencies are going to have all the information you need. They're a little tougher to break into there if you don't understand how to get into there. And if you guys want another time, we can talk about how I broke into that. As a lead generating source and to help provide them back business, but they know a lot about down payment assistance. But my main go-to source is my guy, Marcus Anderson at Nexa Mortgage. And he's licensed, I think in like 43 out of 50 states. But the reason why I use Marcus Anderson is because with Nexa Mortgage, they're a broker, but not just any broker. They have a special thing called the scenario generator. And basically how that works is he goes in and they have, I want to say as of this year, 263 lenders that they can actually shop. They go back and say, okay, here's my clients, yada, yada, yada. Here's their situation. Here's everything about them. Here's everything that was collected. By the way, here's the challenges that we see. They also need down payment assistance options. And then he plugs it in, and all the lenders that match that criteria reach out and say, we would love that business. Here's the down payment assistance options we can do. And what that does is, instead of just limiting us to county programs, a lot of times it's lender programs. A lot of times, there's grants out there for depending on where you're moving, but then there's grants out there, believe it or not, which is strange. They don't care where you're moving. It depends on where you're moving from, which is just mind blowing. There's so many grants out there. It's not even funny. Some are forgivable. Some are repayable. I mean, we can go all day, but I use him because he has brought me the most options when it comes to making sure my clients really do have the solutions out there. Because the other part about that is, every lender has specific programs that they work with. But when you can shop 260 something lenders, the options are just unlimited.
Before we go, we always ask our guests one question. What is your favorite podcast that you are listening to right now? And where can we learn more about you after that?
My favorite podcast, obviously you guys at this point.
Well, of course, naturally.
The Realtor Rant is my favorite podcast. I don't really have a favorite podcast, to be honest with you. The favorite person I like to listen to is Ricky Carruth. He's a free coach.
Love him.
Yes. He invented Zero Diamond. That guy is gold. Look him up on YouTube. Look up Zero Diamond. That's my favorite coach out there. And if he did have a podcast, I'd probably be one of his top fans.
Surely he has a podcast.
He has a YouTube channel that he does a lot of stuff on. I've been following Ricky, I swear, since he had like 3,000 followers. He is awesome. Awesome.
Back when he was Remax at Orange Beach.
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, where can our listeners find more about you, DeAndre?
Believe it or not, Google me. I'm all over Google, and it's only because of the amount of marketing that I do. Google me. You can pull me up at DeAndre.Perez on Instagram. That's my handle. Look me up, DeAndre Perez on Facebook. Or you can simply give me a phone call, 407-417-5722. But yeah, if you're curious, Google DeAndre Perez Realtor, and you'll find my images and videos all over the internet.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
DeAndre, you're awesome.
Absolutely, guys. Well, you ladies continue being tremendous and sell.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.